Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy of the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, Kentucky, Louisville to be specific. Hello everybody, my name is Brian Engelman, and this is the Unhappy Hour Sports Show here on the TNAM network, because the news always matters. This is the new American media, because the old American media has failed us. Welcome, thank you for sticking around, thank you for joining me, thank you for staying with me through all of this time. I am ready to rock. Patrick Mahomes signed a massive deal, but of course the devil is in the details. When you go through contracts, a lot of the deals will change by the time the player reaches a certain point in the contract. It's different. Major League Baseball has guaranteed deals, and NFL does not. So this is reportedly a 12-year deal, could end up being worth about $503 million. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, $503 million, 12-year deal. He's only 24 years old. You see Brady play until he's 40, but that's kind of an anomaly. But also, so is Patrick Mahomes. He's an anomaly of a player. So, let's go ahead and see this. They're saying 2031, staying for that entire time. Probably not. They're thinking it might be a 6-year, $183 million deal. That's about $30 million a year, give or take. But then, he'll re-sign another deal at that point. There's a ton of player contracts that have come out. $128 million from Wentz, $134 from Goff, $103 from Newton, $122 from Luck. I mean, look, Newton's not what he used to be. Luck isn't what he used to be. Goff isn't what he used to be. Wentz isn't what he used to be. Careful. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. Speaking of danger, if you see over my shoulder here, two things. One, this is a Cleveland Browns mascot to the Bubba Wallace pit crew. No, there is a little string at the top. This is a caricature. This is a doll, and it's on a thing that's hanging from the ceiling, and it's nothing from an old Western movie or from dark days hundreds of years ago in the southern United States. It's just a Cleveland Browns doll. And then the other thing up here, this is just the logo of the team that I've rooted for my entire life. It is major news. It is national news. It is being talked about at the White House press briefing. It is being talked about from the president. This is Donald Trump's tweet from yesterday. Donald Trump tweets, "They name teams out of strength, not weakness. But now the Washington Redskins and Cleveland Indians, two fabled sports franchises, look like they're going to be changing their names in order to be politically correct. Indians like Elizabeth Warren must be very angry right now." Which is pretty doggone funny. Elizabeth Warren, of course, pretended to be Indian so she could get jobs and all sorts of benefits and perks. But then she proved it by taking an ancestry test by saying she was like 1/1000th. Actually, what was her percentage? Elizabeth Warren percentage. Indian. Native. What do you type? Go to factcheck.org. Pocahontas. What's it? 1/1024th. That is the number that I was thinking of. So we have that. Is it time? Is it time for our beloved Chief Wahoo to leave? I mean, the Dolans retired Chief Wahoo a year or two ago in exchange for an all-star game. If a person didn't like a group, I couldn't imagine them wanting them as the mascot. I couldn't imagine them, in a mocking way. Ha ha ha, there's my mascot. It's a childhood cartoon mascot. It's obviously a cartoon. The term Indian is not technically accurate. These are feather, not dot, as a lot of the Indian conversation goes. Feather or dot. Obviously, this is not the continent of India trading spices. So the name Indians for a whole group is technically not accurate, but that doesn't make it evil or derogatory or racist. It was just not quite accurate. I mean, I remember we had the whole Ebonics conversation back in the 90s. I mean, grammatically, it's not accurate. It's not a thing, but then it becomes a thing. Slang, if you will. I don't, the Cleveland Indians were named after Louis Sock Alexis, the first Native American player in Major League Baseball. The Cleveland Indians are a storied franchise that has broken barriers. Louis Sock Alexis becoming the first Native American player to play in Major League Baseball. Larry Doby was the very first black player to play in the American League. Yes, Frank Robinson gets all the credit, but Larry Doby played for the Cleveland Indians. He broke the American League color barrier. Frank Robinson became the first black manager in the American League for the Cleveland Indians. So this is a franchise that has been progressive. It has been forward-thinking regarding race relations. And yes, the team name represents a whole group of people, Native Americans, Indians. If you've been to Ohio, been to the Great Indian Serpent Mount in southern Ohio, it's a rich tradition. Cuyahoga County, where Cleveland is, that's a Native American name, an Indian name. I don't know about the word indigenous. Indigenous is kind of that phrase that I guess that has more popularity. Just how, old people would say Negro instead of African American, or Negro, like the Negro Leagues of baseball. People would say, Negro instead of black or African American. By the way, when people call me white, I'm not white. I know I got lighting on me and it looks white, but I'm very beige, very peach, very tan. So there's nothing accurate about calling me white either. It doesn't make it evil to be called white. But I digress. Ohio has a rich tradition and history of Indian tribes. I was saying about the term indigenous. A lot of the Indian tribes, the native tribes, they weren't indigenous. They say, that was their land. These were migrant. These were groups of roaming. They would follow buffalo. They didn't have cities per se. They would pack their wigwams, pack their tents, hop on horseback or however they would go, and they'd follow the water. They'd follow the game. So there's a lot of migration, and it's this conversation we're having now. Hey, we should cancel Hamilton, which is great, by the way. You should watch Hamilton. Just canceling all things that aren't perfect. I mean, where does that stop? There's nothing that was perfect. In Christianity, you're taught there was one perfect dude. Okay, so you can't have any statues or any street names after anybody not perfect. It's very disingenuous what's going on. And, people say what they're trying to do is put scalps up. That was the indigenous tradition of scalping people and holding up their scalps or trading in scalps for pay. The British were paying the Indian tribes to attack American colonists as they were headed west. The British, during the Revolutionary War, were paying goods and services and supplies and money to attack the colonists and bring scalps. So what is indigenous to an area? We just happen to be there. So if the Indians do decide to change their name, I'm going to be disappointed. I don't think it's necessary. If the Indians change their name to anything, what about the tribe? I call them the tribe anyway. A tribe is a positive connotation. The tribe, it's a close-knit family, a band of brothers, if you will. A tribe, a group, a family. How about the tribe? Keep the logo, keep the mascot. You're updating it a little bit for cultural sensitivities. Just a little bit, because it's not so far out of line. I don't know, I don't get how erasing things makes things better. Definitely not interested in erasing the American flag, the American country, the American ideals of prosperity and freedom and tolerance and love. And where we started to where we are today, society has, I think you would say, improved. If you didn't say that society has improved, I would wonder what society you'd be looking for. Because we've had women's suffrage, we've had the abolition of slavery, and down the line, it's the most inclusive, tolerant place on earth, unless you're from a certain political persuasion saying that you're not allowed to have opinions if you're right of center. And that's a strange place to find yourself. But I'll tell you something that isn't strange. I'm going to shift gears. Here's my question of the day. Here, let's do question of the day. If you change the Cleveland Indians name, what would you change the name to? The Cleveland what? I've heard the Spiders, the Heroes, the Americans. I don't know. I don't want to change the name. All right, real quick, if you have not participated yet, I have a couple of these left. This is the Unhappy Hour Sports Show. I'm showing you on the Facebook group. Here you go, and I'll show you on this camera as well. Where's my lighting? But these are collector pins. Only 100 will ever be made. I'm probably only going to sell 50 of them. They're $25 a piece. They're donations. Donations, minimum $25. PayPal. Just let me know if you want one. Leave a comment, and we will set that up, and we'll mail one out to you right away. Where are we at? I think we're at number 17, 18. I know someone's already claimed number 24. So jump in. We're down to probably only about half left. 100% of the proceeds for the donations of these collectors pins for the Unhappy Hour. You can support us. Memorabilia. Hopefully this will be worth a bunch on eBay later on. One of these days as a collector's item. 100% of the proceeds will go to our graphic designer who created the logo in advance of payment. And he said, just use the logo and sell some merchandise and pay me back later. So thankfully I've been able to send quite a bit to him over the past couple of weeks. And I'm asking you again for your support. If you would like a pin, let me know. Leave a comment. Leave a message. They're really cool. Anyhow. I want to talk about this. Well, I mean, I guess since we talked about we did make a Bubba Wallace comment, and I guess we did reference Donald Trump's tweet from yesterday. And Trump tweeted yesterday, has Bubba Wallace apologized to all those great NASCAR drivers and officials who came to his aid, stood by his side, and were willing to sacrifice everything for him, only to find out that the whole thing was just another hoax. That and flag decision has caused lowest ratings ever. So, at the White House press briefing yesterday, essentially what all of the questions was about why does the president seem to defend the flag? This was Bubba Wallace was pushing NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag. So the Confederate flag is something that people in the South, some people in the South, revere might be too strong of a word, but they don't view it as an awful, hateful symbol. Other people will say, look, that was an insurrection movement fighting your brothers to the north, and one of the key issues was you wanting to keep humans in bondage so you could make money off of them doing your work. There's nothing to suggest we should have to look at that flag. It's a symbol of hate. It's not a good thing. Here's a flag. You might think the same about a logo that I've cheered for, I've revered, I've looked up to, I've dreamed about playing on the field, meeting my heroes, and cheering on a World Series championship that I still haven't received yet. But I see this, and I don't see anything wrong with it. I see the team that I love. I like baseball. I like Cleveland baseball. I like the people around me, my group, my family, my tribe, my friends. I don't see it. I've seen the response T-shirts that say that, like the Cleveland Caucasians, and it's like a white dude as a cartoon. So I don't know, but I think it is a good point. The Bubba Wallace commentary. I mean, NASCAR jumped to conclusions. I mean, anybody in Bubba Wallace's camp should have known that this story was not what you thought it was. It shouldn't have been allowed to go that far that fast. And half of that, you got to blame NASCAR. You have to blame NASCAR for coming out with, this vile and disgusting act. I forget the exact verbiage. I don't have the press release in front of me. But they came out denouncing this awful racist act. That wasn't proven at all. That was NASCAR jumping to a conclusion, jumping to an assumption. There were 15 federal agents sent in to see, is this a crime of hate? Well, show me a crime that isn't a crime of hate. That whole, the verbiage of prioritizing crimes over other crimes, it's like, an attack is an attack, intimidation's intimidation, and I don't get how some are more important. It reminds me of that George Orwell phrase in Animal Farm, some animals are more equal than others. But yeah, I mean, NASCAR and all the drivers stood behind him and did that big photo op, and the whole thing reeked of Jussie Smollett. Or the LeBron James accusation that had no video footage and no photographs of the alleged damage on his garage door. Zero proof. Now, if you have proof, link to it, and I'll amend that. But I've been looking around. I haven't seen it, and I've read reports about LAPD dropping their investigation when they found out that there was no footage from LeBron's Los Angeles mansion during the finals when he played with the Cavaliers against the Golden State Warriors. It just had a bad vibe to me, the whole Bubba Wallace story. And I know the next day what he came out with is he said, that was a straight up noose, bro. That was a straight up noose. That's not what the 15 federal agents determined. They said that there was no evidence of a hate crime that was occurring. So that's what you go on. A loop, a rope, it's no more for a Clint Eastwood movie, Hang 'em High, or something like that, than it is for a awful Southern racist lynching. A knot is a knot, and it's not a racist act, according to the 15 federal agents that came by. So at least the initial reaction from Bubba Wallace was to double down on CNN and say that was a straight up noose. What do you say? You grab the handle and you pull it down. And it happened in November, which was half a year ahead of time when nobody knew who was going to be in anybody's garage. Now, I guess it's possible that someone could have said, hey, there's a black dude in NASCAR now and we don't like that. So, you know what? I think it'll be funny. I'll tie these all to look like nooses, and he'll eventually come around through one of them, and it's going to be in all of these garages. I mean, if you had a little caricature inside of one, I get it. It's just a rope, and it's a knot, and it's not a racist act. But this story has really bothered people. It's really bothered people. There have been people in our groups that have not been willing to accept what the 15 federal agents found. They think there's something more there, even though there's no there. They know it. And there have been arguments in the Facebook groups. By the way, if you're not in the Facebook group, it's called The Unhappy Hour Sports Show, a support group. Please join. Invite your sports friends. You as well, if you're in the group, invite your friends. If they talk Indians, Cavs, Browns, Buckeyes, Blue Jackets, that type of thing, and national sports news, go ahead and sign up. Be a part of it. Invite your friends, because this is our community. And people are I know it's an election season. I know people are getting really agitated. But here at the New American Media and the Unhappy Hour, we're going to give you an opposite. We're going to give you an opposite perspective, perhaps, than you're going to be getting from some of the other outlets like ESPN. And I want to tell you about ESPN for a second, because it's all come full circle. ABC, ESPN, Disney. Let's see what this is. ABC, ESPN, Disney has just inked a deal with Colin Kaepernick. And Jemele Hill is going to be affiliated. Remember Jemele Hill? To people that only want to see things through a prism of evil racism, you're going to find it everywhere, and it's only a matter of time before they reconnect like magnets. Let me just skim through this. What is this? It's an article I just pulled up on Twitter. It says, Kaepernick, I reject your seemingly misplaced hate for America. We are the most equitable, charitable, and just nation on earth. It's difficult for me to understand the contempt and hate from those on the left, along with others, for America. Most of these people are not immigrants who sacrificed everything to get to America, but are the young American-born citizens whose concept of our nation is deeply flawed. Colin Kaepernick is one of them. He appears to have a deep disdain for America that he just can't seem to shake. Still, it is this very nation that has allowed Kaepernick to amass allegedly more than $20 million for basically playing football. He had to have made way more than $20 million, didn't he? He's actually in the top 1% of some of the wealthiest people on the planet. As of today, he never has to worry about where his next meal will come from, and his health care isn't a problem. For so many people, these goals are simply unattainable. They live in nations where the individual isn't honored, corruption runs deep, and liberty is only a fleeting thought. I reject Kaepernick's seemingly misplaced hate for America. On July 4th, Kaepernick shared a video on Twitter. He said in his tweet that America's Independence Day is, quote, a celebration of white supremacy. You got that? Independence Day is now, according to Colin Kaepernick, who just signed a nice deal with ESPN, who is supposed to be delivering to you all of your sports information. Devoid of slant, devoid of angles, devoid of political leanings and bullying. This article here, who's this author? SarahCarter.com. Continues, he's entitled to his opinion, but it's filled with hypocrisy. The video was of actor James Earl Jones reciting Frederick Douglass's historical speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. It is a remarkable poem that evokes the sadness and horrors of our past. It is a past that we should never forget and never repeat. Every day I'm reminded of our nation's bloody Civil War. In Alexandria, Virginia, the past is blended with the present, and I imagine as I walk through the parks, in Old Town and along some of the city's oldest cobblestone streets, the blood spilt for the Union was not in vain, and it fundamentally changed our nation. We are not defined by our past, but defined by our present and future. For the most part, as a society, we have condemned racism in all its forms and have fought for justice throughout our history. That is something we should be proud of. Why should we take from our ancestors the great sacrifices made to free our nation? Their legacy and sacrifice led to a point in our present where women could vote, slavery was abolished, children's rights are protected, and justice is a concept that is fought for daily. Kaepernick, along with others like him, want you to believe that the present must be judged by the actions of people in a society that we never knew. It's impossible to reconcile the two. There's nothing anyone can do to change the past but to learn from it. Don't fall for the Marxist ideology poisoning our society today. Nothing good comes from tearing down a world so many people sacrificed so much for. Yes, we should never forget the horrors of our past, but similarly, we must never... Okay, that was an auto... I really don't like when browsers reformat something when you're in the middle of reading it. Just kind of not a fan of that. Daily. Kaepernick, along with others like him, want you to believe that it's the present that must be judged by the actions of people in a society that we never knew. It's impossible to reconcile the two. There's nothing anyone can do to change the past but to learn from it. Don't fall for the Marxist ideology poisoning our society today. Nothing good comes from tearing down a world so many people sacrificed so much for. Yes, we should never forget the horrors of our past, but similarly, we must never forget the great men and women who sacrificed so much to make us one of the most equitable, charitable, and just nations on earth. Now, the reason this is being put out there, and I'll retweet that. I guess I can't. I got to log in. That'll take a second. We're on Twitter at American_media_ and at TheUnhappyHour_. So Colin Kaepernick signs a deal with Disney after complaining that America oppresses him. There you go, $40 million in career earnings, lucrative partnership with Nike, and constant fawning for the media and every celebrity out there. Just days after reminding people of how oppressed he was, he signs a mega deal with Disney. And if I could just find a straight news story on it. Yes, first Kaepernick wore socks depicting cops as pigs and called America racist. Oh, now Deshaun Jackson is quoting Hitler. NFL, you have a problem. Okay. Well, there's that. Colin Kaepernick wore a shirt celebrating gay-killing mass murderer Che Guevara. He's a Marxist who hates America and loves brutal killers. And corporate America is so cowardly that it endorses this con man. Well, there you go. And remember, Colin Kaepernick said it himself, his kneeling was meant to disrespect the American flag and the nation itself. What's this one? From the Washington Examiner. Close to continue browsing. No thanks. Where's his quote? Here you go. This is something you all need to know when discussing Colin Kaepernick, who was twice benched for Blaine Gabbert. Hardly, I almost said Drew Bledsoe, hardly Tom Brady. Ex-quarterback Colin Kaepernick tweeted an Independence Day message reminding us that he was always a radical leftist, American-hating agitator. His national anthem stunt was always about deliberately dishonoring the flag and the country. Oh, and NFL superstar Drew Brees merits an apology from all those who criticized his original thoughtful statement about why he would always stand for the anthem. Quote, "We reject your celebration of white supremacy and look forward to liberation for all." tweeted Kaepernick about the 4th of July because he said, quote, "Black people have been dehumanized, brutalized, criminalized, and terrorized by America for centuries and are expected to join your commemoration of independence while you enslaved our ancestors." This precisely echoes the original reason he gave for beginning his protests at NFL games in 2016. Quote, remember this, in his words, Colin Kaepernick's words, his own words, quote, "I am not going to stand up and show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color," he said then. This was not a protest against police violence or racism that just happened to occur during the anthem. It was specifically targeted at the anthem and flag so as to blame the country as such for the ills that Kaepernick was protesting. The message was not, this is from the WashingtonExaminer.com, by the way, the message was not that the nation per se had a flawed past and that vestiges remained in some people's hearts and minds in a way that even well-intentioned laws and institutions had not yet eradicated. No, the message was that the institutions themselves were deliberately racist and oppressive and that the nation itself was unworthy of pride. So yes, all of this kneeling during the anthem stuff was and is about disrespecting the flag of the United States of America. Everybody knows it. It is precisely and intentionally about that. If it were just about protesting racism and police misconduct, Kaepernick wouldn't say things like that. Also, there'd be plenty of other ways to make that point without intruding on what had always been an aspirationally unifying civic ritual. As longtime sports columnist Jason Whitlock, who is black, wrote this week in disgust at Kaepernick, quote, "It's a divisive hot take packaged as righteous indignation." And that's an interesting guy right there, that Jason Whitlock. I really dislike his work sometimes. And other times I think it's spot on. It appears to be spot on here. So it's just, it's interesting for you to want to know and to look in on. Nike, Disney, the NFL, ESPN, ABC, the Democratic Party, anyway, I'm just, Miami Herald columnist Armando Salguero destroyed Colin Kaepernick this morning. He was born in Cuba. Yeah, Che Guevara t-shirts. I thought it was Castro. Why did I say Castro? Is it Che? All right, so anyway, that's ABC, ESPN, Disney for you. So when you're supposed to pretend that this isn't called coordinated attack, that this isn't a media firestorm self-created, if you're supposed to pretend that this is all organic, that these nationwide things have nothing to do with trained Marxists putting a movement together that sounds good, but it's actually really divisive and bad, dangerous, reminiscent of the Patriot Act that, you know, sounds good. Who doesn't want to be a patriot? Like Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. My life matters. Your life matters. All of our lives matter. It's not what's going on here. This is something that sounds good, but what it's wrapped up in. It's almost like you hear those stories of people wrapping poison in like bacon or something, or hamburger meat, and you toss it over the fence at the dog you don't like. I mean, you've heard those stories. They're pretty gross. They're pretty vile. But you'll wrap it up in something. It's like, well, yes, I don't like police abuse. Nobody does. That's awful. Did you see that video? Yes, that's gross. Yes, that has to stop. Yes, I agree with that. But when it's a Marxist political movement wrapped in bacon, I'm good. I'm not feeling so hungry right now. But ABC, ESPN, Disney will just keep going after you. Just keep force feeding you like your Joey freaking Chestnut. Have another hot dog, you fatty. Come on, that's it. What do you have, 75 hot dogs? Hot dog contest. And what was it, Peter Gant? Was it Peter Gant? Yeah, 75 hot dogs and buns for Joey Chestnut. New world record and 33 more than his closest competitor this year. That's pretty incredible. But who was it? Whoa, what was that picture? Oh my gosh. I wish I could show you this. Woo! Anyway, I forget. Oh, Kyrie. What's Kyrie's story? Because I gotta go. I can't be here. Kyrie Irving, you may remember him from such Cleveland Cavaliers championships as 2016. Kyrie Irving's TV program is calling for action in Breonna Taylor's death. Being here in Louisville, that is a big story. No-knock raids. I think we should always examine police tactics. Look, I'm not really too concerned when a dude attacks police officers, steals their weapon, turns and shoots them, like in Atlanta, and then what? Then you got to burn that city down? You got to burn that Wendy's down? Like, that's playing stupid games, winning stupid prizes. But no-knock raids? Hey, there's an issue. What is so dangerous that you can't announce yourself with a warrant and get someone to open the door? Breonna Taylor here in Louisville. It was a no-knock raid. Taylor, a 26-year-old black emergency medical technician, was shot 8 times in Louisville, Kentucky on March 13th by plainclothes officers serving a narcotics search warrant without knocking at her apartment. No drugs were found. Louisville has seen weeks of protests over the shooting, and demonstrators around the country have chanted Taylor's name. So Kyrie Irving, who's been vocal about social justice issues, says society is calling attention to police brutality and systemic racism. It's critical to magnify how these unjust behaviors and practices are directly impacting black women. And just, look, here's the problem. Calling attention to police brutality and systemic racism. In 2020, tell me, what law is systemically racist? I have not heard a great answer to any of that. It's these murky, cloudy, grayed out waters that you can't really see through and you can't confirm or deny it. There's not something, you can reach your hand out, you didn't touch anything, but is there something right there? Maybe. I don't know how you define that. That George Floyd thing, we'll see what happens in that trial, but like, didn't those two guys know each other? What if the cop was just a dick and a murderer? How do you know what's in his heart? How do you know it was racist? Just because he's white and because that guy's black? What about the Asian officer? Where does Asian fit in? The only stories that seem to make it on ESPN, ABC, Disney, just being crammed down our throats is if a white person does something bad to a black person. That's like the perfect story that the media wants to just elevate and show you 100 times. Do you know David Dorn's name? That was an innocent black dude who served his community well. He wasn't terrorizing his community like George Floyd was, arrested over and over and over again. You don't hear certain stories when it doesn't fit a narrative, but you'll hear certain other stories over and over and over again for power control, intimidation, pressure, for shakedowns. But my only issue here is calling attention to police brutality and systemic racism. I think anybody on earth can look at a situation and determine if there's police brutality occurring. I don't know how you define racism. Did somebody say a bad word? Guess what? You've said a bad word too. Every one of you has. You've thought bad things. You've said bad things. It happens. Nobody's perfect. But as a society, we try to get a little better about that stuff. If you see someone like Kelly Thomas being... The cops literally put on rubber gloves, latex gloves, before they beat this homeless guy to death in Fullerton. The Fullerton, California police. Kelly Thomas, white dude, so you probably haven't heard of it. But it was one of the stories that initially made me sick to my stomach watching. And police escalation, militarization, police abuse. That's a universal issue. Don't divide that by color lines. That's not just happening in one community or another. I've had run-ins with people that were unnecessarily aggressive. People that, it's like, what's that Ron White joke about bouncers that go home and watch movies about bouncers bouncing? People that are way too amped up to crack skulls. That's not what policing is supposed to be. But you can't just go defund the police. It's just a little ridiculous. So I'm hearing different stuff about the COVID rate, about the coronavirus. We're going to wrap this up here. Once again, if you want one of these pins, send me a message. This is the Unhappy Hour Sports Show collectible pins. Only about 25 more are going out. Minimum $25 donation. 100% of the proceeds go to our graphic designer until his invoice is paid in full for making us that awesome logo in advance. Leave me a message if you want one. Invite your friends to the groups. So my question of the day, I got to get back to it because I don't think I really even asked you. I went off on a tangent, sorry. I think it was more important that I cranked out a show today than I gave you a perfect show. So I'm doing the best I can to get back on a regular routine here because I need to talk to you guys every day. Every day, every day. And by the way, for the people that are asking me to do less politics and more sports, I get you. I know. But look, you got to cut me a little bit of slack. There's no sports going on right now, so everything is about social justice. My question of the day was, if the Cleveland Indians can't be the Cleveland Indians, what would you suggest their name be? I think the Tribe is the only answer, the Cleveland Tribe. I call them the Tribe anyway. There's nothing derogatory about the Tribe. Why not keep a cool logo? That's like one of the best logos in sports. It's just such a happy guy. And I know the real Louis Sockalexis was not a happy guy. He had alcoholism issues, and he was out of the league quick, and he died quick. But that was the inspiration for the name in the first place when the team was renamed. Cleveland had named teams after, it was the Cleveland Naps, N-A-P-S, for Nap LaJoie. This is a city that has a tradition of naming teams after people. The Cleveland Browns were named after not Jim Brown, but Paul Brown. And yes, you could have called it Louis Sockalexis. You could have do this, the Louis Sockalexises or the Sockalexises, but that's pretty wonky. You could do the Sox, but we already had the White Sox and the Red Sox, right? I'm trying to remember 1915 when the White Sox and the when the Red Sox were founded as clubs, but that wouldn't have made sense. Same with Indians, the whole group. You know, like Fighting Irish, Irish Catholics, Catholic school, Fighting Irish, getting drunk, getting into fights, I don't know. The Indians, you think of a close-knit group of people that understand battle and combat. That's a good team concept. Anyway, if it cannot be the Indians, what would you like to see the team named? I think the Tribe is the only one that I could be okay with. But then that would have to stop this stuff dead in its tracks. And just say, we're just going to retire that name. We're going to go by our nickname. The Tribe. We're the Tribe. Cleveland Tribe. That would not be hard to do. And you would not alienate your fan base. But there's also a big concern that the Dolans are going to take the franchise and get them out of Cleveland in 2023 when their lease is up. So we're going to be back covering that story more. We're also going to be back covering the NBA trying to restart the season. A lot of people, a lot of positive COVID tests, a lot of concern and worry. Same with baseball. More, facilities are being shut down, more positive tests. People are concerned. Hockey, I still say you put your top 8 teams, your top 16 teams, your final 4 teams, and let somebody win a college basketball championship in men's basketball. Just do it. I don't know. Put them in a bubble for 2 weeks, then just play. If you don't want to participate in that 2-week bubble, then don't play in the championship round. Do a back-to-back. Semifinal game the one day, and then the finals the next day. Just back-to-back, pay-per-view, no fans. People would watch. It'd be the biggest game in town. Those college kids deserve a champion. So I'm hearing different information. If I go to Drudge Report, here, let me go. Brazil's Bolsonaro tests positive. World Health Organization says the pandemic is accelerating, still short of its peak. States are mandating masks and begin to shut down again as cases soar. Newsom in California is ramping up enforcement. Hospitalizations jump 50% in California. Dozens of Florida ICUs are at full capacity. Protective gear for medical workers begins to run low again. We'll be living with masks for years. These are all highlights. These are all bullet points on Drudge Report. However, if you look at the death rate seems to be plummeting. We're at the lowest numbers of daily deaths that we've had essentially since this thing started. This should be fantastic. This should be at the top of the news, but we're identifying all of the bad stuff. So what's going to happen as people try to restart? As the leagues try to restart? The Nets aren't going to have Spencer Dinwiddie. He had a positive COVID test. NFLPA president is at odds with the league over their virus plan. And that's J.C. Tretter. That's a Cleveland. All right. Cleveland Browns J.C. Tretter. Final story, and I'm out of here. NFL Players Association President J.C. Tretter escalated a disagreement Tuesday with the NFL over the terms of training camp and the preseason amid the coronavirus pandemic, writing in a blog post that the league is, quote, unwilling to prioritize player safety and believes that the virus will bend to football. The NFL solidified plans last week to cut the 2020 preseason in half from 4 games to 2 games, which, by the way, bravo. You don't need it. Don't force the fans to pay for it. It's crap. You just don't. You don't need that. And to create a 23-day acclimation period in training camp to account for the likelihood the players will report to training camp less prepared for football after an entirely virtual offseason program. The NFLPA objected privately to that plan, which the NFL has not announced publicly, and its Board of Player representatives voted last week to endorse a plan with no preseason games. All right. According to Treader, the NFL has not provided a medical reason for insisting on 2 preseason games, partially in response to a surge of Achilles tendon and hamstring injuries occurring after the league's 2011 lockout similarly wiped out the offseason program. So, concerns that you rush back and players are not going to be at the same level. So it is. It's something to think about. And we'll follow the story. I mean, all these leagues are guessing how to figure out putting life back together. So, anyhow, that's the sports world for you. My name's Brian Engelman. I want to thank you for participating, for joining me. More content coming soon. I enjoy this too much to stop doing it. I just got to build the studio and just lock it in and do it every day. So in the meantime, tell your friends, pick up a pin, send me a message if you want to support the Unhappy Hour Sports Show with a collectible pin. They're super cool. There you go. There's in the light. And I'll talk to you again soon. Take care. Peace.